Hey, everybody, welcome aboard. It's Tuesday. We got another week. I'm still kind of relegated to Sue's computer, so it's a very small screen in front of me, like a 17-inch computer screen. I'm used to a bigger screen with my onesie, my Hewlett Packard all-in-one, which I gifted to my son. So I hope he's enjoying that. And I've got a big box and more processing power, and I can open up all the little tabs to my heart's content. But I've got a 32-inch screen coming. So I'm really looking forward to having a big screen for doing the show. Got very handy when you're doing live streams. Got my new camera. I cracked it out. It's set up here, but I haven't plugged it in yet. It's ready to go. Should be Friday. So whether it'll be in time for the nooner on Friday or not, I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully it'll be here sometime Friday, and I'll be able to hook it up. And then it's always about a week to set the whole thing of all the programs, your passwords. I want this, I want that, I need the background. You know how it goes. But anyway, another heavy news cycle coming through. We're going to be a little Canadian centric, so apologies to our American friends today. Those in England, there's big stories: Australia, England, America, Europe. But right now, Canada, and particularly British Columbia, where Blake and I actually live. Now, I'm in Nanaimo, Blake's in Victoria, the capital, and it's just crazy. So I've got some stuff lined up with clicks and links and all this. The big story is land claims. This is something Blake addressed a few weeks ago. You might want to call him Kreskin, because he was able to predict this down to the wire. You're going to own nothing, but you're not going to be happy. You're going to own nothing. You're going to be miserable, man. And this is what's happening. So I've got my first link, my first click, and this is kind of, we're going to go into the oral question period in British Columbia legislature. Dallas Brody there's a new party forming called 1BC. This is a right-wing party. This is a party I will be supporting on the provincial level here. I just don't think the People's Party of Canada is doing it. I think I love Maxime. I have no problems with the guy, Maxime Bernier, but he's not bringing the votes. It's not happening. So, okay, well, let's try 1BC. Maybe the people will get behind that. We shall see. So first clip, there it is. And boom. And then let's make this bigger. And let's play the clip for everybody. Sue's not with us today, so I'm doing all the lifting. Hopefully this will be loud enough. Again, I don't have as much control as I will in future episodes, but we'll try our best. Here we go.
A judge has decided that homes in Richmond are now owned by the Cowichan tribes because their great-grandparents once fished there. That is Aboriginal title. There are 200 more bands in BC with their own Aboriginal title claims. Judges have the legal authority to give away every square inch of this province, including your home, as long as Aboriginal title remains in our Constitution. Mr. Speaker, property rights are the foundation of Western civilization. Aboriginal title is an existential threat to that civilization. My question is for the Premier. Will he support constitutional reform to legally extinguish Aboriginal title?
Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, we take a different view than the member on many things, including this one. The work of reconciliation and sitting down with First Nations across this province to resolve historic wrong and to bring certainty to the land is the path forward, and it's a path that we will continue to take, and is an important one. And I've already talked quite extensively about our approach in this legal matter that we'll continue to take to uphold private property rights, and we will continue to work with First Nations to bring agreements and certainty to the land. Thank you.
Okay, that's our first clip. I got a few to go through, so I just want to play them. Then I'm going to turn it over to you, Blake, because there'll be a lot to see here. But there you go. This is currently, it's happening in Richmond, British Columbia. It's a small area, 7 kilometers, something like that, very small section of property. But again, as the Adrian Brody or whatever the young lady's name is saying, that this is going to expand. There's other tribes, and this is a uniquely British Columbia problem. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, these other places have treaties in place that were signed by the Native people. They signed over and signed off a long time ago. So it's British Columbia, uniquely problem to British Columbia. Okay, the next one is dealing with land claim numbers. I thought this was interesting to further elaborate and further illustrate what we're dealing with here. And again, I generally have to make these larger for the program so everybody can read them. Okay, we'll do that. That's part one. We go here. Let's expand it. There we go. There are over 2 million homeowners in British Columbia. You may no longer own your home. 95% of British Columbia's land base is currently subject to unresolved claims of Aboriginal title. The court just ruled in the Cowichan case that a successful determination of Aboriginal title can declare free simple interest invalid as unjustified infringements. This means the assumed indefeasibility of registered titles of BC home and business orders under British Columbia's Land Title Act just flew out the window. In other words, you may think you own your home, but you don't. Here's Blake down in this territory here. So the Nuchtan, something.
Legwagan, I think.
Whatever
That's
the fuck.
Soggies, yeah.
And then I'm up around here. This is Nanaimo's right about here.
Yeah.
So there's me and Blake, and then there's the rest of it with the native tribes on there. So 95%. So we're dealing with a lot of frickin' territory, boys and girls. Okay, we're not done there. Let's do another one. Now, this is really interesting because this ties in. It's unbelievable.
It is.
This is the ostrich farm kids. Now, okay, CBS exists. We start. I want to go cancel that one, and then I want to start a new share. Bear with me. I don't have Susie to help on it. Okay. I believe this is what I want. Very concerning. Let's see the size. Let's make it bigger. Okay, here we go, Blake. This is all dealing with the ostrich farm. The government wants to put to death 400 healthy ostriches out of fears of bird flu. Ostensibly, that's the talking point, but really, it has more to do with herd immunity and the impact on viruses and this sort of thing. So there's a lot more to the story. Nonetheless, how does this dovetail with the Indian thing? Well, we're going to do it right now. Very concerning. Why does a First Nations rep have more sway in an issue involving access to private property than the property owners and their lawyers? She has introduced international law over Canadian law. This is something I've said for many years now, that the appeal to the United Nations to supplant, to subjugate national laws and to make those secondary to international law is a horrible reality that could be coming to a town near you. Is this where endless land acknowledgements will lead? Starts off seemingly innocuously with, we acknowledge this land is unceded territory. They do this kind of rhetoric. They do it at universities. They do it at public functions. Is this where all that kind of rhetoric leads? The involvement of CFICO in the ostrich farm saga opens a whole new set of concerns for Canada. Buckle up, Canadians. Here we go with the clip. I'll do this. And again, I'm hoping it'll be large enough for everybody to enjoy. Here we go.
We usually get a flat out no. So whether they're delaying it, we don't know, or what's going on.
No, but we're I'm the steward of the great law, though, and they can't be consulting other people. They're supposed to be consulting with me. We carry the seal of all nation international law. Your oath is to Canada. It's not even to we the people. So
that's the answer the CFIA gave.
Well, why can't we get a number to the CFIA or whatever? Because I don't.
You can reach through them through.
We usually get a flat out no. So whether they're delaying it.
Okay. So this woman comes in, Blake, And clearly she's Native, and she is saying basically, who the fuck are you? I'm representing the UN. You're doing Canadian law. We're doing international law. We outrank you, essentially, is what she's saying. Absolutely horrific. The implications that Canada, is a sovereign nation state, ostensibly on paper at least, is not really in charge of its own destiny here. And then one final link on all this story, Blake, which again dovetails in it. It's not exactly the story, but it does dovetail. All right, here we go, Blake. And then I'm going to turn it over to you when this is done. Jordan Keeley, hey, everybody. I just want you to know about Bill 27, which just got voted through a second reading in the legislature today. It's very alarming how much our government keeps doing things behind closed doors. I was the only one to vote against it, and I'm one of the few who spoke against it. It is about school boards using expropriation laws and also municipalities being able to have more closed door meetings with First Nations. Closed door. I believe transparency with the public is key, and I've attached a video of myself speaking to this bill. I apologize to the length of the video, but it is worth the watch. Inform yourself. So this guy does a lot of platitudes, a lot of, hey, natives are great, we love Indians, blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is that the government is seeking to have closed door meetings, school boards, etc., with native interest groups. And to what end? What are what do you mean closed door? What do you people are taught? What are you talking about in secret that you can't tell and inform the general Canadian public about? Right. So Blake, Richmond, Ostrich Farm, international law. What is the real message behind all this? You said it a few weeks ago. You're like Kreskin with a crystal ball. You said, look out, folks. Yeah. This is something entirely different. We're going to own nothing, and we're going to be fucking miserable. Go ahead, Blake. Take it away.
Well, I think it's just the culmination of everything, how we've talked about this probably since we started this whole program. I mean, right from the beginning, we've targeted the WF as this worldwide economic forum group of central bankers allied to massive central banking interests, which would include the large asset manager class companies, the BlackRocks, the Vanguards, the State Streets, the Brookfield, our prime minister, etc. They have taken over massive sectors of our economy, and they're doing that using union pension funds, which is an activist center to control the direction of corporations from the Marxist side of our labor. But really, they're in collusion with corporate world corporate interests, and have been using that power to wield to swing changes, everything from politics to obviously crony capitalist legislative benefits that just benefit them. We've seen it as in my own industry, from short-term rentals all the way to mining and resource extraction. And really, in Canada, being the second largest country in the world, is considered one of the most resource rich lands that's yet to really be hitting anywhere near its potential. So there's a lot of resources here. And the way I viewed this Truth and Reconciliation Plan is what it came out of DRIPA, which came originally introduced through the UN, through UDRIP, or what they call it, UN DRIPs, but it's United Nations Statement on Indigenous Peoples, et cetera, et cetera. It was really targeting mainly Canada. And of course, who were the big sponsors behind that and voted in favor of it? China and the WF and the globalists who did this. And of course, the globalists who have implanted their governments here. We've seen Canada. We said this from the beginning, that they're entrenched here. Canada is a place where these guys are dug into their trenches. It's like World War I. The Huns are dug in, and they're taking their artillery from the other side of the border, and they're taking shots back. And this is where they've drawn their lines to go at Trump as well. So we know it's not just Trump. It's America. It's American Constitution. They're going against it all because they want to control it all. And the easiest way you could do it in the Pacific Coast, in one of the largest land masses of under a governing control, which would be British Columbia on the Pacific Coast, access to Pacific Asia ports, the biggest trade, easiest, fastest trade routes, massive amount of critical minerals, logging, fiber, farming if you go to the Peace River country, it's massive. Actually, it's technically under Treaty 8, I believe, is what parts of that part of British Columbia is still under a treaty. But those treaties, what you were saying earlier, they're trying to overturn them. So I think this isn't just a British Columbia. British Columbia is the staging ground in Canada as they start to drop the dominoes across Canada. And I think this is exactly what they're trying to do, is to drive what Klaus Schwab would say is you'll own nothing and be happy. Essentially, these corporate interests are allied to obviously using Indigenous leadership because they're not funding it themselves. The people funding these court cases, who the governments who have allowed these court cases to proceed and to win, have been left unchecked. To bring in DRIPA as a law in British Columbia was the first sign. WF hands are all over, which means China has interests all over David Eby, the premier. This premier, people are saying he's inept. No, he's not inept. He's doing exactly what he has been dropped into BC to do: destroy it, wreck it completely to the point where it's a complete handover. There's nothing left. And legally, nobody owns anything. And it's so easy to do this here. And I think that's the problem. We're a low population. We're 5.5 million people, almost 6 million people in British Columbia, of which 250,000 approximately are First Nations, Indigenous people. So less than 5% of the population is Indigenous. And I think what they're doing is they're utilizing this legislation to strip the power of you and me, or the average mom and pop people, the small business people, the people that own a little piece of land, a little farm, the people who try and work in logging or even mining or other interests at a small scale and make a home for their families and build a little business for their families. And this is what these people are against. They're against that you have your own individual autonomy. And they're using the Indigenous legislation to start stripping away the very foundation of our Western civilization. And we've mentioned this before. You take away somebody's right to own their castle, you've now stripped them down to serfdom. That's it. They're just to serf on the land. And what's happening is these massive corporations that are allied to the big asset management classes, funded by the union pension funds, they're buying up everything. They're the ones that are investing in massive gold mining companies, massive hospitality companies, massive real estate development companies. They're taking over everything. And British Columbia is easy pickings. That's the problem. We don't have a population that will pick up their rifle and defend their homes. And that's the difference. Canada is pretty weak when it comes out. If this was happening in the US, it would have been shot down, would never happen.
Yeah. Well, they've got a constitution. They got a lot going for them.
They have a constitution and property rights and all that side of it. Yeah. And I think in Canada, we've exposed that. But the real irony in this is that the Indigenous people that this is supposed to support, they don't even get property rights in this individually. It's a collectivism. If you look at it, the only people that are going to profit off this are the people at the top, and then they'll spill a few beans down to the lower parts of their nations, and it will be like a bunch of little Saudi princes in their little kingdoms, running their little kingdoms, getting enriched heavily as the corporations grease their palms and drive out all the small business, all the competing people at the local level. Just like you're seeing in the stock market, there's a shakedown to get the small investor out and basically get them to panic and sell while the big institutional investment companies buy it all back up again. And they can do that. They can drive those values up and down. But this is what's happening in British Columbia. at a property level. So when you have a decision like this, it says literally in British Columbia, we call it fee simple ownership. That means you own the title, that they're saying it's now in question. That judge who ruled for that Richmond, and Richmond, if anybody wants to know, Richmond's now a suburb of Vancouver, but it is a separate city. This is going to expand across Vancouver. This is going to expand across British Columbia. It's going to expand across Canada.
Like
and they're even talking about it in the US. Like there's sympathetic Indigenous groups in the US who said, we've never unseated. We're unseated as well. And there is liberals and stuff that kind of get sided. And they're the worst, because the liberal people tend to walk in with their emotion on their sleeves. Yeah, it was wrong and horrible that happened to these people, da 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 da. But they're not reading behind the lines. They're not looking behind the curtain to who's actually pulling those strings. That judge that ruled in that Richmond case and that said that fee simple becomes secondary to Aboriginal title, which means you don't have a right to your land that you just spent or bought and lived your whole life working to buy, or your family's created a farm and you've passed it down through the generations and you've cultivated the land only to be turned over in this way. It's really a disaster of epic proportions. You won't be able to get a mortgage if you buy a property with this uneasiness. I mean, nobody's going to know. And if you end up buying on native land, you never own the land. They do developments for non-natives on native land. And how it works is the federal government underwrites it. So you never own it. You get like let's call it like a 99-year lease, much like if you live in Banff or Jasper and you're inside the park, you get a lease. And that lease gets guaranteed by the federal government, not the provincial government. And essentially you never own it. You never own it. You own the building that sits on it, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of what Sue and my story. We inherited some great property in Oak Bay. It's Oak Bay, for those that don't know, is one of the most wealthy municipalities in the greater Victoria area. It's highly desirable. We could not afford the land tax to live on. You know, you inherit the house, but we can't afford to stay there. We had to sell the house. We moved to Sydney. Little small 3-bedroom unit there, rancher, have to sell that because the land value started going up and up on that. We're an old retired couple. Now we're in a double wide trailer in Nanaimo. You know, we don't own it. Now we don't own that. Now we don't own it. We just own a trailer and we're renting the land that we're on now. The paying. Here's another thing I really object to. When you own your house, when you own your property, all land tax should go. You buy it, you own it. That's private property. You bought it, you own it. The government's hands are out of it. No capital gains. When you die, hand the thing off to your kid and keep it in the family in perpetuity. It's less drain on the economy overall, because once we're out on the street with nowhere to go, now we become wards of the state. Well, now you fuckers have got to pay for us because we can't look after ourselves anymore. I see, and this term has been used a lot, but this whole native land claim thing is a fulfillment, is part and parcel of the Agenda 2030 program. You'll own nothing. You're not going to have any private property. You're not going to own anything. And you're going to be happy as their measure. I think we'll be miserable not owning anything. As you say, we'll be like reduced to serfs. Horrific state of affairs. And we are witnessing what many have called the greatest transference of wealth in recorded history. That we are seeing the absolute desolation of the middle classes, and that money is going into these big corporate entities. Such as Brookfield and these other Vanguard and these other conglomerates that you have mentioned many times on this program. So absolutely worrying. My one kind of caveat is always when it comes to this discussion, thank God the United States of America is on our border, because all it takes is somebody to tell Marco Rubio what the hell's going on. And I'm sure the American ambassador, hey, you know what's going on in Canada right now? That kind of information will get to Trump. The administration knows what it's doing. Heard some really encouraging things about the current administration. A quick change of topic is that they are looking at Antifa and these judges. Another one of these god awful judges just got put in her place by the Ninth Circuit Appeal. She had thrown up a roadblock to Trump getting the National Guard into Portland, Oregon. And that just got blown. The doors got blown off of that. The president is going to be allowed because it's constitutionally allowed. Praise God. So Trump is going to do it. So I really see the United States of America, particularly under this administration. And I heard it was the guy Steve Miller. Miller. He's a bit of a character. He's brash. He's bold. That guy is a senior Trump strategist. They are looking at how to systematically dismantle this corrupt system that got into place from these communists infiltrating the United States of America into media, into government, into the judiciary, into every fabric of life, the education system. And they are absolutely dismantling this cancer that has infected the United States. They're doing it strategically, they're doing it with knowledge, and they're doing it with effectiveness. And I, for one, cannot be more happy, more pleased to see it going down. So I have a lot of hope that the long ball game for Canada is that with America on our border, they're just simply not going to allow this World Economic Forum, beta test, alpha test to run free and rampant according to communist dictates. While China's, buying up the property, having so much fun. I just see America allowing it. I think there's going to be intervention. And I think the economic pressure that Canada is already under, we're in deep, deep shit economically. And because of these liberal policies, and I'll just go one point back to British Columbia, a report coming out today, the NDP government is pushing new legislation that says we want to be able to designate hydro electric power to go where we want it to go. Traditionally, it's just been, it's an open field. It's free access for all Canadians or all British Columbians, if you will, to access electric power, hydro driven. Now
they called it the BC Advantage. That's what it used to be called.
Now they want to change it because there's not enough electric power to go around, because they're torpedoing our natural. We can't use that. You can't use this kind of power. This is clean energy. This isn't clean energy. So we're getting kneecapped by these activist politicians. EB's a guy that's running the joint right now.
Yeah, Manchurian candidate.
Yeah, he's running into the ground. And now they're saying, okay, we're going to put it to companies that are favorable to the NDP party. So it's cronyism. Crony capitalism is just absolutely disgusting. Again, I don't know how long we can keep going. I was watching a program on the English situation, and it was the host of the American sponsor, the host, he had an English guest, and he said, actually, the guy came from Australia. It was an Australian expat living in England. And he goes, how long has England got? Like right now, this country is going to be dead in 4 years unless Trump had come in. Thank God he saved the country. But you guys don't have an election until 2029 in England. And they're putting it off because right now it's not looking good for Labour. It looks like the Reform Party is going to gain massive popular.
Well, we've seen that here in Canada too, right? With the polls, right? It was supposed to be a massive conservative win this last election, and then out of nowhere, the polls started swinging elbows up for Mark Carney, the central banker elite, rolls in, the very guy that the left usually abhor, right? They hate that kind of capitalist guy coming in, but no, he came in as a savior for the left. How does a central banker who works for Brookfield, because he works for the unions? That's the problem. When you talk about the central core, the power that we've given over to the public service, and I'm not talking the average Joe who works or Jill that works for the government, but
Yeah.
the power of the leadership of those unions. You want to fix the problem in the US, those No Kings rallies or the protests here, almost all of them are public service unions. You don't see blue collar union guys standing out there arm in arm with these guys
Yeah.
outside of maybe a handful of their crazy leadership. But the blue collar guys are the ones that are under
Well,
attack.
they were also saying it was the Grey Panthers, essentially. I mean, everybody's
Yeah.
all baby boomers.
That's our in the U.S. It was our elbows up baby boomers were in the U.S. protests. It's the same people. And as a matter of fact, they had the No Kings protests in Canada, and it was the same elbows up
hold on.
people.
What's the problem with the No Kings protest in Canada?
Yeah, that would be interesting. No kings down here, but we have a king in Canada. That's scary.
Canada is part of the Commonwealth, so our head of state in Canada is actually the Crown King of England, Charles III.
Yeah. But what you were mentioning earlier, I want to touch on because it's very important. The power, W.A.C. Bennett, who was one of our premiers in 1950, who basically reformed British Columbia, turning into an economic powerhouse. He created BC Hydro, which was a crown corporation, to convert it into the BC Advantage, which means all British Columbians, small businesses, because he was a small business guy, and individuals get cheap power, right? So they basically, they nationalized power, much like you nationalized highways, to basically provide cheap power for its citizens. So that was a great idea. It actually works. Sometimes those ideas work if left alone. Just leave it alone, let it do its thing.
Yeah.
But then what happened was it started being destroyed by the BC Liberals in the early 2000s when they started creating run-of-the-river projects. Guess who was behind that? Campbell, our premier, takes off to the Bilderberger Summit. That was the pre-WF side of the meeting.
The
that was their
and then that got besmirched.
And then the WF was just basically the public relations arm that made it public because they now felt bold enough. Well, we can make this public. Everyone knows we're meeting in secret anyways under these Bilderberger meetings. Anyways, he was invited to go in the first term of his premiership, and he was brought in by who? The power companies invited him because they wanted to take over British Columbia's power control, the creation of power. We have all these hydropower projects. So they created this to start dismantling what was an actual benefit to all of its individual citizens who'd always have cheap power, and then handing it over to these massive global corporations that start taking over. And this is kind of like the beginning. We started to see it. BC Rail got handed over to CNCP, which then got taken over, merged together, and taken over by large multinational interests.
Yeah.
And we just started seeing the dominoes in the last 20 years. That judge you highlighted in a tweet who made that decision, who's calling herself Indigenous. And I saw your tweet. You're like, yeah I'm 25%. I'm sure she's got a lot more. Anyway, I counter tweeted to you and that, or backing up, you're saying, I think it may be Elizabeth Warren's cousin.
Yeah, so, Pocahontas syndrome going.
But she was appointed in 2006. That's when the Liberals were in charge.
Yeah.
So you could see this path. And this is why the BC United, which was the BC Liberals, when they tried to rebrand it and won, collapsed. And they swung over the power control of the BC Conservatives. I was in the BC Conservatives over 20 years ago. We were infiltrated by BC Liberals to prevent us from getting any traction. They wanted the brand to put it on the shelf, box it up to use later. And what are we seeing happen again today? The Liberals that were running the Liberals jumped ship, took control of the BC Conservative Party, which was starting to rise on its own. They swing their people in there. This happened to the Liberal Party back in the early 1990s as well.
Yeah.
When Gordon Wilson lost to Gordon Campbell, when the Liberals kind of swung in there and took it all over. And I'm talking about the globalist Liberals. Like BC's infected with these people here. It's really bad.
Okay.
But I'm just...
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, finish your thought. And then I want to move on to yet another story because we're
Yeah,
already getting down
yeah.
for time. Go
But
ahead.
I just the corruption was put in place for quite some time. The Nishka decision, all allied. If you just follow the money, right? It's always comes down to that. Follow the money and the power. If we wanted to fix things right now, really quick, what Trump should do right now is abolish public sector unions. Period. Make all public sectors simply a what do you call it? Basically they can't ever be a strike because they're an essential service.
Essential services.
There were because they don't belong to a union. They don't belong to an individual. They're supposed to belong to the people. That service you serve the public because it is a privilege to serve the public, and you go into that role not to take it over, become a workers' monopoly, but they're using that money to control what's happening in the private sector, using massive wealth to go against our own free market, free enterprise, including private property ownership. Like we're seeing the whole thing. These guys are all part of it. And that is fascism when the public and the private merge into one. And that is where cronyism kicks in. They're using Marxist theories mixed with Chinese crony capitalism. And that's that sort of Maoist system that we're seeing today that's infecting Canada badly.
Okay. I love you, Blake. I want to move on and cover another story. This next story is great because it affects Canadians, Americans, Brits, everybody all over the world. And it speaks to the absolute hubris, the absolute insanity that the left is doing when it comes to controlling the internet, controlling the narrative, if you will. And this thing just astounded me, and I want to play it for our collective edification. This thing it was just nuts when it came across. So hang on, here's the clip. And again, it's a clip, so we're going to play it in its entirety for you. When I saw this, Blake, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But the sheer audacity of it all, they're the ones to play it. Okay, this comes via Autism Capital, the Signal, Wikipedia, NPR, okay, Signal, Wikipedia, NPR class believe that it's okay to lie as long as it's in the service of what they consider to be, quote, the greater good, quote, the greater good. These are the people who want a monopoly on education. This is the narrative, right? Education, speech, and knowledge. Our reverence for the truth might have become a distraction. Let's not revere truth. Who gives a fuck about reality? This is what this idiot is saying. Absolutely moronic. She goes big. Let's play this moron. You judge for yourselves.
But one of the most significant differences, critical for moving from polarization to productivity, is that the Wikipedians who write these articles aren't actually focused on finding the truth. They're working for something that's a little bit more attainable, which is the best of what we can know right now. And after 7 years there, I actually believe that they're onto something. That for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth isn't necessarily the best place to start. In fact, I think our reverence for the truth might have become a bit of a distraction that is preventing us from finding consensus and getting important things done. Now, none of that's to say that the truth isn't important. The truth obviously exists. It's at the core, or the search for the truth is at the core of some of our greatest human achievements. It can animate and inspire us to do, learn, and create great things. But I think in our messy human hearts, we also know that the truth is something of a fickle mistress, and that the beauty of the truth is actually often in the struggle. It's the reason that we have so many sublime chronicles of the human experience, because there are so many different truths to be explored. And so in this spirit, I know that the truth exists for each of you in this room. It also probably exists for the person sitting next to you. But the thing is, the two of you don't necessarily have the same truths. And this is because for many of us, truth is what we make when we merge facts about the world with our beliefs about the world. Each of us has our own truth, and it's probably a good one. It's based.
All right. So here we get a lesson. And what she's talking about is relativism. Truth is
Yeah.
relative. It's just as I see it. It's solipsism, which is a philosophy of it. Reality is whatever I make it to be.
Yeah.
And she's saying, let's sacrifice that. When you move that yardstick of definitive objective reality into the realm of, well, I just think it, at that point, there's no consensus for there is no room for any consensus, and you're willing to believe a lie, because if you don't
Yeah.
want truth, you're going to get the lie. It's a one-to-one correlation. It's not just some abstract appreciation of truth as a concept or an ideal that's unachievable. It has to be grounded in fact and truth. This is why you get all this revisionist bullshit, that Africans started. They built the Colosseum in Rome. Jesus was black. He's African. They reinvent all this England. The black people, the Vikings are all African, and all this nonsensical, made up crap
Yeah.
that has no basis in reality, but I just feel it. I just think of it. I sure feel good about myself when I think about it that way. It also extends to the transgender thing. I just think I'm a beautiful lady. While the little children, those especially the little girls, are running around in horror, because they go, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I'm going to
Well,
grow
apparently
up.
we're gone beyond. I
What?
think trans is passe now. I think you have to be trans species now.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, if you look at any Antifa crowd, I mean, you see all
Yeah,
sorts
they get their little
but,
kitty litters in the classroom.
yeah. But bringing it back in a bit,
Yeah.
lasso it in. It just is absolutely insanity to me
Yeah.
that this person would say, "Hey, our search for truth could get in the way." In other words, that gives us a freedom out of whatever ideal you may perceive, to disregard actual facts, actual truth, actual reality in order to foster your own corrupt vision of a make-believe world that you would like to see occur, but has no basis in reality. Oh, look, I'm in Norse mythology, and Heimdall, the guardian of the Rainbow Bridge, the Norse god, guardian to Bifrost, is Idris Elba. Hello, how are you? I'm Idris Elba. Welcome to Asgard. It's just kind of crazy to me.
Well, you can see where this insanity continues to roll, because this goes straight to the idea that you can have everybody have their own truth, quote unquote, which is what you pointed out, Dallas Brody, at the beginning. That was one of the things she went out about the truth and reconciliation industry. And she got thrown out of the party for basically talking about my truth, whose truth. There's just truth. And she got thrown out for saying that. So what's dangerous about this is that there's no diversity anymore. There's just disunity. And it's easy as a disruptor political movement to come in and blow everything up, have everyone fighting with each other because they all have their own truths, and then finally comes somebody says, I have the truth. They get enough followers behind them, and then they take over. And that's what happens. I mean, we know the Religion of Peace has their version of the truth, and that, I don't know if we'd feel uncomfortable having them having control or power on that side.
No,
but
opposite,
even scary is that the people that transhumanists, right? They can take power. Well, life isn't sacred. That's no longer a truth anymore. And if they can say everybody has their own truth, and in my truth, you guys all don't exist, so you're just a figment of my imagination, which just could go to absolute insanity, to Hitler-esque, throw people in camps, because you know what? You dehumanize. They're not real people anyways, because my truth says that you guys are just like a disease on the planet.
Yeah.
Because that's where it just goes. It dehumanizes who we are. We do have to have unity. That's the fact. Unified vision, unified laws.
Unity can only come out of truth. Otherwise, you're unified around a false reality, a false consciousness, to borrow one from the Marxists themselves.
And it wasn't in the very foundations of the U.S. Constitution and their Declaration of Independence is that they state that they believe these truths were self-evident.
Amen.
Truth is self-evident, right?
Yeah.
And that's for everybody. They're self-evident. And it's like science, folks. Certain sciences are self-evident, such as the Earth goes around the sun. The sun doesn't go around the Earth. We're not on a flat Earth. We're on a round Earth.
Yeah,
There's
sorry,
facts.
sorry, Catholic Church. We got to give the nod to Copernicus.
Yeah, exactly. And Galileo.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. We got another kind of related story just about truth, about perception. Really, it's more of the lunatic left, as our beloved president says. So I got this one here. This is one of our favorite pawns, Blake. The frickin' NDP are at it again. Okay, hang on. Let me share the link here. Okay, this is another clip here. It's just nuts. Holy crap. Teaching students about the dangers of drug addiction is now wrong in Dave Eby's British Columbia. British Columbia NDP MLA Stephanie Higginson finds that the Drug Use Prevention Education in Schools Act that explicitly discourages drug use is deeply concerning. Okay, so let's see what this moron's got going on.
Is not only outdated, in fact.
Okay, hang on. She said it's outdated. Let's see what this little button says. Here we go.
Is not only outdated, in fact, it reminds me of the 1980s era scared straight that was in place when I was young. It risks undermining the very outcomes it seeks to achieve. The bill mandates a curriculum that explicitly discourages drug use and promotes stigma against drug use as a deterrent. This language is deeply concerning. We know from decades of research and experience that stigmatizing drug use does not prevent it. Is not only outdated, in fact, it reminds me of the 19.
All right.
This is why Kentucky has 16,000 dead people because of people like her.
Okay, she's a bona fide moron. Here's the deal, Blake. When I was a kid, I was like 9, 10 years old. It's the 1960s. I'm very elderly. 1960s, they showed anti-drug films to my generation. And one kid's taking a bunch of, Bennies or Dexies. Okay, I'm using cool hip talk for all our drug users. We love you. We got your number. And so, he's getting his pills, and the kid pops them, right? He's on his bed. And then he goes to the mirror in a little while. He gets up and goes to the mirror, and his face turns into a monster. Now I'm like 8 or 9. I go, ah! I go, what the fuck? So that actually worked on me. Now it didn't stop all drug. I had like a little marijuana. I was excited.
Reefer madness.
I got the reefer madness. But the heavy drugs, I didn't want to do heroin. I didn't want to do LSD. I never did L, to my knowledge, right? You go to a party. I went to a party. I was in Pard Hardy. And, there's a joint running around, and somebody laced the joint with cocaine, right? So they got the joint. Then they put a line of coke. And then the joint's just being passed around, people taking hits off. Now I saw the coke go into it. So I'll pass on that. Yeah. But so many people get into it. Now, what I'm saying is that negative messaging, don't do it. I didn't want to see monsters. And, we heard about Art Linkletter. It turned out to be apocryphal. It was kind of a village old wives' tale kind of thing, that it wasn't true. But that his daughter had an LSD backflash and, flashback, and she threw herself out a window and died. Now, she did die, but whether, it was because of the LSD drug, I mean, that's, we read too much into it, but at the time it was used a lot. It got a lot of traffic, let's say, pardon the pun, dealing with drugs, trafficking, very bad. So what about you, Blake? Were you scared straight, or did that work on you? Did you get anything like that? It certainly did work on me. So I say she's wrong from an anecdotal perspective. It certainly did. But just to say, don't say drugs are bad. We don't want that messaging. Yeah, that's exactly the messaging we want. It's bad. Don't fuck yourself up. You want to be like this retard? And there's guys I went to school with that, man, They were so fucked up. They were like, there's acid
Yeah, we used
casualties.
to call them burnouts. That was
Yeah, it was
everyone
like
called.
we had one guy. I don't want to mention his name. His first name was Jim. He'd be, "Hey Jim," everybody go, "Hey Jim, how's it going?" He go, "What?"
Yeah,
Guy used to say, "What?" And that's all they could do. What?
yeah.
And everybody
The
started
Jeff
laughing. Hey
Spicoli of the
Jim.
school.
Yeah, it became kind of a tag thing that all the kids would do. Okay, so
But
what do
yeah,
you think? I mean, typical NDP nonsense from my perspective. Go ahead.
well, I for the NDP, I take it further because they're allied to this sort of death cult. They're
Yeah,
horrible. These are the people that have allowed, along with our liberal government in Canada, the federal government as well. BC's had a double dose, no pun intended, of insanity with this stuff. We've got
yeah,
tens of we've had something well over 60. I think we have now over 17,000 people dead from the opioid crisis in the last decade under their control. People are dying in the streets. There's bodies in the streets. I mean,
yeah,
it went from but I think for your and I's era, yeah, there was the heroin addicts that they were there. They were kind of in the background once in a while. There was more drunkards in the streets, not really. They
yeah.
call them
Drunk
rubbies
alcohol.
from,
Yeah,
because they drink rubbing alcohol, the alcoholics. And
yeah,
yeah, there would be some of that. But the worst of the drugs would be kind of like someone selling pot on the street, somebody selling acid or whatever. I mean, some people could say Timothy Leary, I think wasn't his name. He was the guy that may have been a CIA plant getting everybody to start taking acid. Um, but yeah, I didn't get scared straight. I saw friends around me and, I sampled certain things in my teens because I grew up in the
yeah,
80s as a teenager. It wasn't until the late 80s I became an adult.
yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, and
it was
hold on. I wanted to just to tell the kids of, especially our music crew, people watching from the vinyl community, keep in mind here, kids. My buddy Blake was hanging around with the kids from Soundgarden, and he was a producer, basically. I don't know, what do you call it? Like you were the Bob Eubanks of
well,
Victoria, British
I
Columbia.
was a promoter and I helped
Yeah,
with some band management and stuff like that. And
yeah,
did really, I mean, I hung out with the guy who played in Soundgarden,
yeah.
not
But
the band Soundgarden.
you knew these bands.
And
They
he
would
also
come
played
in.
in Nirvana and he hung out
Yeah,
with us and all that kind of stuff. So,
there
but
you go.
that was like late 80s, early 90s when I was
Yeah,
becoming an adult. Um, but yeah, I mean, grew up in the Reagan era, right? As a teenager, right? That was Reagan became president when was becoming a
he's one of our
teenager.
best. We love
Yeah,
Ronnie.
and I remember, remember this is your brain on drugs commercial. They threw the egg in the
Yeah,
frying
the
pan.
egg. Yeah,
Yeah, but it was something that we all saw around us, and yeah, it was more the burnout crowd, but not today. Like it went from 0 to 60. It just seemed like in seconds, in a matter of a couple decades, where the
they
people on the street
facilitated it. I would argue both that
exactly.
they facilitated, and once they facilitated, then we had an outbreak. Dave Eby, the moron that's running this province, British
Yeah,
Columbia, he's on record now saying, "I think we kind of fucked up when it came." He doesn't use the F word,
yeah.
but he says we kind of messed up when it came to our, our the way we handled the drug thing. And oh, come on, and we'll got a hash pipe. What? You don't have your own hash pipe? Don't
I
worry
don't
about it.
believe him. I think he thinks it's still fine. He's just trying to keep a public perception because even with the BC Conservatives collapsing right now,
Yeah.
internal fighting, splintering into multiple parties now. It's not just one BC, but there's been, two others leave in the last 2 weeks. And
Yeah.
two formed a party, two are kind of on their own at the moment. There's big pushes to get Rustad to resign. So they can realign the right to get the right back together again. But
So
he's got
tell
to
the
go.
kids
But I think
about,
he's a globalist. But I'm
yeah,
just going to
tell the
say,
kids about Rustad. That's the trick about Rustad.
yeah, I mean,
He represents the right wing in British Columbia, but
yeah,
this guy, kids, he's a snake. He's a liberal, and he hired a whole bunch of former
he,
Liberal Party members to run his show.
well, no, not just that. Former
NDP.
NDP people
Oh
that
my
have
God,
switched
boy.
over, staffers from the NDP to work in managing the party at the legislature. Now, I don't
Nuts.
know. Maybe they're there to help out. They're paid professionals like hitmen, but I doubt it. But the point is, Rustad came over from the BC Liberal Party when the Liberal Party was collapsing. He got booted out, and he came over to take over the BC Conservative Party along with Bannon. He was the other one that came over. And they created, the two of them basically resurrected the BC Conservative Party and really rode the coattails of the Polyev was going to win federally, and the BC election was before the federal election, so they rode on that, just about won. And there's still an argument out there that potentially they did win. There's maybe some shenanigans going to be coming out in the court soon, showing that there may have been shenanigans in our electoral process here at BC, which I'll say a certain voting machine company was potentially involved with, but we'll see how that rolls. I won't say who because they're suing people. But I think that, I mean, it's we're in dire straits. I mean, the people that are running our drug cartel, which is our government, these people want people dead. They want us gone. They're attacking our property rights here. They're stripping us of our rights, our individual rights and freedoms. They want us to die through drugs. They want us to die for feeling depressed through MAID. They're using MAID for the most. They're using it as a farm now in Canada to collect body parts to sell to Americans who are desperate for livers. And kidneys,
so when Blake says MAID, folks, in America, England, elsewhere, that is medically assisted induced death, basically, MAID.
Yeah, and it's government run,
and it's horrible. And it's something like 35% of the people that die in Canada are now dying this way. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
Oh yeah, and it's not because it's not.
I don't know what the percentages. Don't.
Well, and they're now telling people that they should go do MAID if they get a diagnosis. Just in your first diagnosis of dementia, just go to MAID. But the point is, they're telling people who are suffering from severe drug addiction to go use MAID. They're telling people to use MAID if they are chronically depressed and they can't get better. They're just saying, people are going to kill themselves. It happens on their own. They're going to walk into an ocean. They're going to swim down or disappear in a river, drive a car into the, over a cliff. People do stupid stuff and because they're really depressed. But you know what? The government shouldn't be sponsoring that. But I'm just saying it's a death cult. We have a death cult here. And they don't want us here, and you're seeing this happen. And I believe when you said it's dead on, this is a policy that's purposely being perpetrated. This isn't inept government. This is planned. There's a big difference. These guys, and now we've got like people nervous in Canada because Polyev is actually coming out and saying people need to go to jail, including Trudeau, for massive multi-billion-dollar theft. In one case alone, when there's others. Now, is Polyev really meaning it, or is he just trying to grab votes? Who knows? But the point is, as soon as it comes up, look what the institutional regime media does. They turn so quickly. Oh, we need to stamp that out quickly and go against anybody
there was a full court
that.
press by the legacy media to disavow Polyev. They came in heavy. They came in hard from all quarters, written media. They were, it's like watching something in the U.S. If Trump does something good, you'll see a full court press from the left, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, NBC, CBS, the usual suspects, CNN. They all go hard against him. Blake, speaking of legacy media, we're nearing the end. We got 3 minutes to go. Let's end on this story. Okay, this is it. We go here. We're going to share this. I just kind of laughed at this one, Blake. How bad are those numbers if the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation is willing to fight in court to keep them sealed? Defund! CTV News reporting on their older colleague, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. CBC launches court fight to keep GEM subscriber numbers confidential. Look at this moron. CBC launches court fight to keep the numbers hidden from the public. Well, why would you do that? 72,000 views on that thing. Okay, Blake. So that's the situation. Why on earth would the CBC launch a court fight so people couldn't see this GEM? I guess GEM is some sort of internet wing of the CBC designed to, I don't know, influence. It's a streaming service or something. Talk to me about GEM, Blake. Do you know what it is? I don't even know what the hell the thing is.
GEM was CBC's streaming service that they wanted to have their own streaming video service to compete with all of us on the private side of doing it ourselves on YouTube and all that. But they wanted to have their own kind of Canadian content version of Netflix.
A lot of people must be watching it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think but it's funded by the taxpayer, and it's completely failing, and it should
Yeah.
be completely defunded. And yet they're hiding their subscriber base because they know it's a lost leader. It's worthless. The only thing it is for cable companies have to include it because
Yeah.
Canada says so. As part of the Canadian content requirements, we have what's called the CRTC in Canada, which is I guess what's the version they have in the
Broadcasting.
US? They have the FAC, or isn't it? No, the FAC. What do they call it down
Everybody
there?
says American Football Conference.
No. Anyway, they got a name for it down there. I can't remember what their version, but ours is really weird. It forces Canadian content. Radio stations have to play like 60% of Canadian music. The television networks had to play 60 or 70%
It
of
made
Canadian content.
sense. It made sense in the 1960s when Canada's had a core identity and all the rest of it. Oh, let's put Mounties and engines in, and away we go, Canada, with some snowshoes. Now let's celebrate Dolly.
Yeah.
Somebody's out celebrating Dwally or Wally, or I don't know what the fuck it is.
Diwali, Festival of Lights. Yeah.
Yeah, you should be ashamed that you even know what the fuck that is. I mean, my God. And, oh, happy Ramadan, Canada. Oh, God, let's go light up a chicken. So I don't know, your ways. Great one. I don't know much about your country. I don't care much about your sport. But I'm telling you, this is the absolute state of Canada. It's nonsensical to have any sort of national broadcaster, any sort of national restrictive laws when you're trying to protect some culture that doesn't even exist anymore. What are you afraid of America?
Yeah.
We're all multicultural. Half of us are, at the shrine. We're at temple today.
Well,
At
if we were
the
going to
mosque.
use free market as the bar to see if something survives what the people want,
Yeah.
the CBC should have survived by subscribers paying
Yeah.
for it. And Gem shows, I think somebody said they probably have less than 1,000 paid subscribers.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so
And
embarrassing.
they're all over 70.
The free market says, no, we don't want you. Die in the ash
Yeah.
heap of history, right? And
Yeah.
by financial failure. But
Yeah.
instead, we prop it up because it's part of the propaganda system. And
Yeah, you're so right.
it's like our
All right.
media.
Yeah. Okay. Now, kids, we've reached that part. It's 101. So I want to shut her down today. As always, I want to thank Blake for being here. A lot of heavy stuff, private property rights going, the transfer of wealth, the World Economic Forum. It seems that Agenda 2030 is well on track here in Canada. Blake and I, as long as we're allowed to broadcast here, captured in the Great White North, we will continue to broadcast, talk about these stories as long as we're able to. YouTube going the opposite way. Again, I think it's in large measure due to the Trump administration. They recognize they can't play the same game they did in the first administration with Trump. There's a lot more power coming into the White House this time around. God bless President Trump. We need him. Hopefully, we're going to be okay. And hopefully, England will be okay. Hopefully, Australia, New Zealand. Again, some of these previously once great countries. Take care, everybody. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. And we're going to be back on Friday. Hopefully, I'll have my new computer in place then, but no promises. We don't know. We'll have to see.